Well, I'm with Sir Ranulph Fiennes, a living legend, if I can put it to you that way.
I'm still alive, yeah.
Still alive. And pleasure to meet you. I mean, we've gone off and done all of our sort of different expeditions, but it's always interesting, and I was just fascinated to sort of find out what your first break was, because I remember when we did our first expedition, you just need somebody to believe in you, somebody to help fund it, somebody to give you that, okay, let's do this thing. Can you throw your mind back and remember that at all?
I think probably in the 60s. Well, I go back to when I was 16 years old with my sister. The local stream in Sussex led into a river called the Rother, which led into another river called the Arundel, which led eventually to the sea. And we eventually got to the sea from our little local stream, and that was the first sort of expedition. And we didn't really need sponsorship. I then graduated to canoes, which cost 80 quid in those days, and I worked through the summer holidays cleaning the local buses and washing up at the hotel in Midhurst, and got 80 quid and got this wonderful two-seater canoe, and we went to Norway, aiming to go the first journey from the west to east of Norway, and on the very first rapids the canoe was so completely mucked up, and that was it.
How old were you on the Norway?
The first Norwegian one that I've just talked to you about, I would have been about 18. Yeah.
Okay, so 16 was your first mini expedition.
Yeah.
I know the Arun quite well, actually, because my grandma used to live in Arundel.
Oh, right,
so you,
well,
you would have paddled past where she lives.
And it comes out on Climping Sands.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was fun. You might have to recreate that one day. Close the circle. Can you remember the first time when you suddenly thought big, and thought, hang on a minute, I might need to get a few people on side?
We did the Jotunheim Glacier in 1965, I think, during the holidays or leave from the army, and we parachuted from 10,000 feet onto 6,000 feet in order to get the equipment onto the top without having to carry it all the way up. That was one of the first expeditions that were put in place by parachutes, and we then surveyed the glacier for the Norwegian Hydrological Board, and we did the first descent of the Briksdalsbre Glacier, which is in permanent motion, and the one person in our team who'd actually climbed something before wasn't able to come, so we didn't really know which way to strap on the crampons and that, and it was pretty hectic. We used Dexian shelving to cross crevasses, which was a very bad idea because it bends in the middle and you get your crampons caught in the holes. Yeah, well, one of our people had a mother who owned a shop, so had her Dexian shelving. So we found, I suppose, that ice, when it's moving due to gravity, is pretty lethal, and that was the last time we ever did anything on ice without proper equipment and proper knowledge.
So do you think, obviously you grew up doing expeditions and adventures, and now everybody's sort of having a crack, and quite rightly too, because the world is an amazing place. But do you think
I think they were back then.
Were they?
Yeah, and I mean, you can go back a lot further than Scott and Shackleton when the Brits were hard at it. You go back 300 years, they were sending ships up to what was then their version of the North Pole, was to get further north than anybody else. But the kill rate and the cannibalization and fingers falling off and whole expeditions, 200 at a time dying and disappearing, the Brits have been at it in cold areas for at least 400 years.
Why do you think that's a British trait? Because we were discussing this the other day about, the Italians have certain characteristics, the French, what is it about the Brits that wherever you travel in the world, there's a Brit doing something bonkers?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're very lucky now that they did, and that they had colonies and all that sort of thing, because as far as we're concerned, it means that our particular language, even though we're a small place, has become almost the global language. It makes everything much easier for us, including trading and economics, and having London as a good centre for banks and that, because of the travellers. Quite why we, as an island race, wanted to go out and do that is a much more complex issue and goes back to various kings and fighting the Spanish and the French, and then deciding that we wanted to do one better. And in a very funny sort of way, not for land but for polar records, we have the same competitional sense, and have done for 40 years, our group against the Norwegians, because we thought 40 years ago that they seemed to think they owned the polar regions.
Do you still have that in you?
We do.
Do you still want to carry on?
Yeah, the people are different. I mean, in those days, Ragnar Thorsketh was in the 70s. He was the main problem. Then there was Erling Kagge. He eventually retired and sold paperbacks, and then now it's Borgi Auslund. So yeah, it's been carrying on for a long time. You know, we've sometimes been quite rude about each other in the national press. Yeah.
So it is actually, there's a little bit of needle there.
Not right now, this particular year, but yes, there has been.
Okay, so has it gone away?
Temporarily, yeah.
Temporarily. What's going to rear its head again?
Depends what we hear that they are trying to do polar-wise.
And then you're going to try and beat them?
And vice versa, that's what happens.
Oh, okay, so there's that constant little
we
thing
keep
going on.
Intelligence going on.
Do you?
Mm.
Wow, I didn't know about this. So is there a sense of spying going on? Because, you know, I mean, obviously the famous story that we're told about, he said, I'm not going to the south, but I'm going to the North Pole, and then suddenly they change.
Very deceitful, very deceitful indeed, not only to us, but to his own men.
So that still sticks in the...
That is a historical indication of what you've got to look out for. I wouldn't be rude about a particular Norwegian, but they are very bossy in terms of polar travel. Yeah.
How fascinating.
And we've been accused of taking a prostitute on our sledge, which was totally untrue, in the Bergens Tidende. And we lost British sponsors because they believed what they read in the News of the World, which had been copied from the Norwegian papers. We never had a prostitute on our sledges, but that was like spin.
Mm. Hype to destroy your mission.
Exactly.
Mm. So basically, are you in a sort of a holding pattern at the moment, or have you got something in your mind that you want to plan next? Are you looking forward to something else?
Some of whom are here now are always planning the next thing, but in between expeditions for 40 years, you have to make a living. You do that by lecturing and writing books. So I've got 2 book contracts over this next year, and I'm researching very hard every day to get them written on time.
Are you up for a non sort of, you know, snow and ice expedition? Or is that what motivates you?
Neither book are. One is about very hot deserts, because I've actually done more journeys in hot stuff than cold stuff over the years, and the other one is because next year is the 600th anniversary of Britain's most famous victory over the French, called Agincourt, which was 1415.
I can sense you're a true Brit.
Yeah, certainly. On expeditions, I would never fly the English flag. You know, my blood is British.
Ooh.
And if the Union Jack has its blue bit removed next year, I'll be very disappointed.
Well, on that point, why can't we keep it in? Just keep it, whatever happens.
I've never heard that suggested.
Why not?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Who cares? It's a design.
Yeah.
That's what a flag is now. There may be history to it, but it is still a symbolic design.
Yes.
And if our roots are there, we just keep it. I like that. I'm an advocate.
I haven't heard that
it.
before. That sounds like a good compromise.
We just keep it.
Yeah.
You know, we're British. If anyone wants to leave Britain, doesn't mean say Britain isn't Britain anymore.
No, that's a good point.
You know, we keep the flag. That's it.
Yeah, I like that.
You know.
Yeah, I mean,
whichever way it goes.
My dad was killed in the Second World War fighting for a Scottish regiment. My uncle was killed in the First World War in the Gordon Highlanders. You know, we are Brits, and for them, those who want, for God knows what reason, probably due to Mel Gibson, want to, you know, call it independent. Whereas in actual fact, if you look back historically, King James VI of Scotland took over the whole of England and Wales, and his dynasty goes down by blood or religion to the current Queen.
Yeah.
And it was one of the Stuarts that called it the Union, which got changed to a United Kingdom. And therefore, if you stick to accuracy, it should be the English seeking independence from the Scots, not the other way around.
Mm. Whereas actually, we're much stronger sticking together as a family.
I mean, look at Team GB. We've got more gold medals than we never have got individually.
Yeah. No, I think it would be a mistake.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see what comes out of it.
Yeah.
But I agree with you with regard to the flag. From my perspective, I thought about that. It's like, well, we just keep it. We are still Britain.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, that's our flag.
Well done, Rob.
The history is there.
That's
it's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you
and
too.
fascinated. I'm sure we might meet again in the future.